So one of the things would be emotional self-awareness. Now, the NTs in here, when they are, I want to make up an example, when they are fearful of something, they have some anxiety about something, but they don't know what the source of the anxiety is. They go purely on the physical signals, get a lump in their throat, maybe they start to get sweaty, maybe they start to get their blood pressure comes up, in their visceral area, they start to have this yucky feeling in their stomach. And they can tell that even though they couldn't put their finger on what's raising their anxiety, their body is telling them that something is not right. The guy with ASD, oftentimes he won't know that he's escalating on the anxiety scale until after he's blown up. And then you'll go, oh, I guess I was anxious. I didn't catch that way back when I was building up. So when my body gives me physical signals that something is wrong, do I pay attention to it and sense what's going on? Do I ignore it? Or do I not even pick up on it at all? That's going to be emotional awareness. Another piece would be empathy. That's not a new word for you coming from me. So you could ask yourself, do I really listen to people when they talk about their issues, or do I just try to jump to a solution? Or as they're talking to me, am I really lost over here in my fantasy world thinking about something else because their topic is boring? Do people confide in me, or do they know that if they come to me, they're not going to get much in the way of consideration, that type of thing? Another component to emotional intelligence, we'll call it, would be impulse control. So a question you could ask yourself was, do I respond to people before they finish telling me something? Or am I quick to want to hurry up and get the conversation over with? Am I quick to want to interrupt the normal flow of give and take conversation and start talking about my special interests and so on? Another component to emotional intelligence would be interpersonal relationships. Do I enjoy socializing with people, or does it feel like work? Do I enjoy talking with my wife, or does talk feel like work? Do I enjoy having sex with my wife, or does sex feel like work? Perhaps the last component, not that there's just these, emotional intelligence, we could call it self-actualization. Am I doing the things in life that I'm really passionate about? Do I really enjoy interpersonal interactions at work, at home? Do I feel like I have a sense of purpose? So that would be another component to emotional intelligence. It's totally common for a child, this usually happens in childhood, where he is the opposite of a sociopath. He's an empath. And he learned at a very young age that it was too anxiety-provoking to feel others' pain. And he learned, and this probably all happened at an unconscious level, because he didn't know what he was doing, learned to shut his feelings off because it was too painful to feel other people's pain. And I refer to this as the paramedic effect. If you're a paramedic, you cannot be an empath because you're dealing with death, destruction, babies being mutilated in cars, stumbling on the scenes where there's mass murder and blood everywhere. The same thing happens with military individuals during time of war. You can't be an empath and be a good soldier. If you're concerned about hurting somebody in times of war, you're at a huge risk. You have to shut it off at the neck, your feelings. So it's not terribly uncommon for some of these guys on the autism spectrum who appear to lack empathy. It's not that they don't lack empathy, they don't display empathy, and at some level they've learned to shut their emotions off. What I run into a lot, as in 100% of the time, in working with people on the autism spectrum, is that they have a tendency to think very poorly of themselves. And we will just call this stinking thinking. And as you have experienced, whether you realized it or not, the same old thinking will yield the same old results. So here are some common examples that people on the autism spectrum may face that lead to toxic, stinking thinking, followed by its replacement thought to help you shift your focus. Okay, number one, you're a failure, right? No, you're a person who sometimes fails, and that's okay, you'll try again. Number two, you're a product of your past. You can't change anything, right? Wrong. Things have happened in the past that influenced your behavior, but you can learn to modify how you think and react. People can and do change, even those on the autism spectrum. Number three, You make a ton of social mistakes and you don't deserve good things in life. Correct? Incorrect. What you did may have been awkward socially, but you can forgive yourself and try again. Next, it's easier to avoid this problem than to face it. No. In the long run, it's better to face this problem and accept your role in it. Then there can be a resolution and improved relationships. Next, things always go wrong for me, right? Wrong. You must accept that things will go wrong sometimes, and that's not a big problem in most cases. Next, this problem shouldn't have happened. I'm to blame or my spouse is to blame. Nope. You might very well be at fault sometimes. Your spouse is at fault sometimes, but neither you nor your spouse are to be blamed because we all make mistakes and we can improve based on the lesson learned. Next, to be worthy and have high self-esteem, you have to be competent and victorious in all respects. You can't expect to be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes and then learn from those mistakes. It's only a failure if you make a mistake but refuse to learn from it. My recommendation would be to not apologize anymore because when you continue to say, I'm sorry you feel that way and this and that, if she's already rejected your apologies, I can promise you, your I'm sorries will just be insulting to her at this point. She will download that as more insincerity. Save yourself the breath. A better line might be, I understand that even though I didn't intend to hurt you, it hurt anyway. And what can I do to help? That's your line. Remove I'm sorry from your vocabulary. Here's the new line. I didn't intend to do that particular thing, but I understand it hurts you anyway. What can I do to help?
Hey guys, this is Mark, and today I want to talk about learned helplessness in people on the autism spectrum. When important things happen, we tend to explain what caused the outcome. Now, the way we explain misfortune can be analyzed along two dimensions, known as locus of control and generality. Let's look at each of these in turn. First, locus of control. An internal locus of control refers to the tendency to take personal responsibility for the outcome. An external locus of control refers to the tendency to attribute the outcome to external events. Generality. Generality refers to considering the outcome as an isolated one-time event or as a permanent condition. Now, people on the autism spectrum who have what I'm going to call learned helplessness tend to have an external locus of control. For example, I have no control over what happens to me, and they tend to view unwanted outcomes as permanent. For example, because I didn't get hired for this job this time, I probably won't get hired for any other job ever. So when we have an external locus of control, we put ourselves in a position of always feeling like a victim of circumstances. And then we go one step worse by generalizing. In other words, this bad outcome is going to continue to repeat itself over and over again.
So a lot of spouses on the autism spectrum have what I'm just going to call learned helplessness. And this phenomenon occurs when the autistic spouse comes to believe that he has little or no control over the relationship difficulties, and that whatever he does to try to change a bad situation is futile. So as a result, this discouraged spouse will stay passive in the face of any unpleasant, harmful, or damaging state of affairs, even when he actually does have the ability to improve his circumstances. Now, learned helplessness can be thought of as believing you are incompetent, that you have no control over the outcome, that it doesn't matter what you say or do, since outcomes no longer depend on actions, and that your actions are pointless. So in order to qualify for this learned helplessness, the person on the spectrum really needs to have these three conditions in place. He has to become inappropriately passive, and this passivity has to follow exposure to numerous unresolved arguments with his spouse, and there is a change in the way this person thinks about his ability to control similar future marital conflict. The spouse on the spectrum with learned helplessness has certain rationalizations and self-talk that could go something like this. Adopting a passive stance provides me with a sense of control over my life circumstances. Beating my head against a brick wall wastes time and energy and is potentially harmful. Hope has its limits. Persistent attempts to control the uncontrollable are futile, and remaining passive allows me to conserve energy when the evidence tells me there is simply nothing else for me to do. So when a spouse on the spectrum feels like it doesn't matter what I say or do, it's never good enough, and my attempts to work on the relationship make the problems worse, this individual will tend to have an external locus of control. For example, He may say things to himself like, I have no control over what happens to me or what happens in this relationship. And he will tend to view unwanted outcomes as permanent. For example, because we couldn't resolve the most recent conflict, therefore we probably won't be able to resolve any conflicts. So we could say that this individual is easily discouraged and somewhat pessimistic, and so he will tend to highlight and emphasize risks. He will highlight problems, is likely to suffer anxiety and depression, is overly concerned with safety and currently does not feel safe in the relationship, is often very passive, which would take the form of shutdowns. He will tend to promote caution, critical thinking, skepticism, and defensive measures. He will recover slowly after an argument, if at all, and quite honestly, he simply feels defeated and stops trying. So this individual needs to realize that there is this other thing called an internal locus of control, which is, I do have control over circumstances. I can't control everything, but I can control me. I can control my responses. I do have some ability and power in this relationship. And he also needs to understand that the vast majority of things are not permanent. Rather, they are temporary. Hey, this is Mark Hutten. Would you like to schedule a one-on-one Zoom call? Okay, it's so simple. Just look under any of my videos in the description area. Click on this Calendly link. Now you see my calendar. Pick your month, your day, anytime that's available. Enter your name and email address. Then you'll get a follow-up email with the Zoom link on the day and time that you picked. And voila, we will talk.